Sustentabilidade, para mim, começa com responsabilidade. Somos responsáveis por cada pessoa que está do nosso lado, as pessoas que moram em condomínios, pelas pessoas que moram na rua. Não se constrói uma sociedade, não se constrói uma sustentabilidade em cima da desgraça de todo um povo. Felipe, Gustavo e Elias.
Mara Lucia Sobo de Santos doesn't use the word sustainability very often. She uses the word survival instead. It's something she knows a lot about.
Eu fui uma menina que vivi nas ruas e através dos resíduos, através do material reciclável, eu fui resgatada. Resgatei minha dignidade, reencontrei minha família e comecei a ter sustentabilidade, que hoje é uma palavra que está muito na moda. Mas há 70 anos atrás, nós não falávamos de sustentabilidade, falava-se de sobrevivência dura do homem do saco.
She became a cart puller and worked her way up off the streets to running this recycling co-op. Mara employs only street kids. She wants them to have the same chance that she had to climb up.
Adoro, porque aqui dentro pode dizer que aqui é uma família.
Mara may be big-hearted, but she has nothing but scorn for the politicians who came to her country for the recent UN summit.
Eu já sinto isso desde pequena, que eu vim de uma família muito pobre. Então a conferência da Rio +20 só me provou mais uma vez que eles são incapazes de amar qualquer tipo de ser, qualquer tipo de coisa que exista nesse planeta. Porque hoje eles não estão preocupados no ser, eles estão preocupados no ter.
Coming up here today, I have no hidden agenda. I am fighting for my future. Losing my future is not like losing an election or a few points on the stock market.
20 years ago, a 12-year-old girl stood up in front of the world leaders, and she pleaded for change.
Because of the holes in our ozone. My dad always says, you are what you do, not what you say. Well, what you do makes me cry at night. You grown-ups say you love us, but I challenge you, please, make your actions reflect your words. Thank you.
That Rio Earth Summit went on to deliver historic agreements on international environmental protection. But now, 2 decades on, an environmental crisis appears closer than ever. And so the United Nations brought the world's leaders together again.
You know, the Secretary General last year in Davos addressed the world leaders of business, and he said, the world is on a suicidal track. We need nothing less than a revolution.
Thomas Stelzer is a UN Assistant Secretary General, the head of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. He says that leading up to the conference, the UN had been trying hard to ring the alarm.
Rio was the last and biggest opportunity to define a future strategy which helps us overcome what we have done wrong in the last decades.
This is a copy of the draft text, a few days before the conference began, complete with the changes requested by member states. It's awash with annotated objections, leaving little hope of consensus even before the summit began. Thomas Stelzer says that he was disappointed that Rio's outcome didn't go further. However, he takes hope in developments outside the negotiations, like Australia's own carbon tax.
Thank you very much, and thank you to our ambassador for that interview.
Australia has shown us that it is possible to introduce carbon pricing. So this is something which is very innovative, which is not supported by many other countries. So we look very carefully how this will be implemented. But this is something innovative which the world is taking note of.
The conference sparked the predictable round of demonstrations.
A Rio +20 oficial é só conversa fiada, onde os grandes políticos e donos de corporações estão reunidos só para discutir coisas do próprio interesse, achando uma economia verde, o que não é essa a solução para os problemas ambientais.
something had changed as well. Rather than simply protest, a huge gathering of activists, NGOs, and entrepreneurs began forming their own collaborations. Their parallel event was colloquially called the People's Summit. There are many differences, but also surprising similarities between what's going on at the UN conference and what's going on here at the People's Summit. Both are truly global meetings. Both have big players and minor actors, and both are supposed to be talking change. The major difference seems to be cooperation. While Rio+20 seemed deadlocked from the very beginning, here at the People's Summit, everyone seems to be cooperating, sharing strategies, and making plans for change. Elnor Lada is a social media entrepreneur.
Part of the beauty of these sort of decentralized events is that, like Occupy, the best thing to come out of it is the contacts. So you meet all these amazing groups, you meet other activists, you meet other campaigners who want to address the structural causes, not just get involved in the process.
Lada took those new contacts and new ideas back to New York, where at the office of the NGO Purpose, he and his colleagues are trying to crack the difficult question of what comes next in the global change game.
Make calls about yes, this group gets to be a part of the network. You know what I mean? It's more about deciding who's in and who's out.
Purpose leverages social media to mobilize activists the world over around common goals. 2011 was the year when this kind of digital activism came into its own.
One of the things I'm spending a lot of my time thinking about right now is the new tools of organizing and mobilizing people have showed that they've showed how we can deconstruct and destroy what exists. And for me, the promise of this is how we can use those tools to actually build something and build viable alternatives.
In an effort to engage with these new forces, the UN organized events such as this, the Youth Innovators Forum. This was the only room I walked into at the main Rio+20 summit that was actually buzzing with energy. It was a discussion between a group of young entrepreneurs and elder advisors handpicked by the Secretary General himself.
We are the future generation that will have to live and work with all of that is implemented.
It included media mogul Ted Turner and economist Jeffrey Sachs.
The good news is that almost no progress was made for 20 years. So you have this great chance. It's all for you. And it is a kind of grim reality, but one you should embrace.
Julia Silverman is one of those young people embracing what Sachs calls grim reality. She was also at Rio+20, making business connections for the rather surprising source of electrical power that she's created. It's called the socket, a football that generates and stores electricity while it's kicked around.
It won't generate anything huge. It's not going to power a computer or anything like that. But the need we're trying to meet is not huge. It's the difference between darkness and light, or no power and some power in your cell phone, instead of having to walk to charge it, or for a kid to do their homework to walk to a city street and sit under a lamplight.
Julia used to work at one of the largest multinational institutions on the planet, the World Bank, but she doesn't regret leaving.
I feel like in the current climate, I'm actually able to make a lot more change and create more impact as a social entrepreneur and a small business owner with the Socket than I was in my previous role at the World Bank.
The company, Uncharted Play, isn't pretending that they have solutions to global problems, but they want the ball to do more than just quietly replace harmful kerosene lamps in developing countries.
To use the ball as a launching point for conversations about sustainability, about where energy comes from, so the scientific side, and then also the softer side, creativity, innovation, thinking creatively about problem solving in your community using the resources that you have.
Okay, so I need to look like I'm doing something. Find out more, actually.
Creative problem solving on a global scale is something that Jeremy Hymans knows all about. He's a co-founder of Purpose and one of the most influential players in the emerging field of mass mobilization using new technology.
This is a fundamental difference, and so sometimes people go, well, the fact that you can do things more quickly, well, why does that matter really? And it matters enormously. It matters enormously when the rest of the world is moving as fast as it is, when media and the news cycle moves as fast as it does. And so if you want to organize people and mobilize them and make them effective as agents of change, you have to catch people at those emotional spikes.
Jeremy also co-founded Avaz and GetUp in Australia, which he says has more active members than all of Australia's political parties combined.
We have been forced, in a way, to go out and create these new sources of power, which are not only designed to help pressure and change those old institutions, but are also effectively in the business of creating new institutions that might be more flexible, responsive, nimble, adaptive.
For Thomas Stelzer, this deeper involvement by ordinary people could also be the key to more effective multilateral negotiations.
It is not enough to go to the ballots every 4 years and to vote. We have to hold politicians accountable. And this is what all this stakeholder involvement is all about. Politicians, when they leave, they go home and they get absorbed in their day-to-day problems. We have to remind them what they have committed to. We have to help them to comply with their commitments.
We were promised leaps and bounds here in Rio, and we've been given a document that barely moves us inches. We reject this text because it is a failure of ambition. It is a failure of vision. We reject this text.
Despite accusations that the Rio summit failed to deliver real progress, the UN insists that multilateral negotiations are still the main game.
Do you feel that young people and capital are going to have to take over for where multilateralism seems to be failing?
They will not replace multilateralism, but they have to become important actors of multilateralism. Multilateralism provides the framework for global solutions.
Does it still provide the framework for global solutions?
It is the only framework we have.
Whether multilateralism can ultimately deliver a solution to global warming won't be known for a long time. But Rio seems to have been a turning point, a moment of turning away from the most powerful institutions in the world and turning towards new and innovative solutions to the crises at hand.
I don't know yet how powerful these countervailing forces of which we're a part will become. I think that's the big unknown.
E a gente tem que entender uma coisa, se nós queremos um mundo melhor, se nós queremos ainda que a próxima geração beba água, que eles conheçam o que é árvore, passarinho, borboleta, isso tem que partir da gente.